Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the virtual programming of the Needham Free Public Library. Tonight we are hosting Tom Keating, Needham author, and we are delighted to be able to showcase his book, Yesterday's Soldier. Tom has been a resident in Needham for quite a few years. He's also very active in the community and with the Needham Veterans of Foreign War Post. So without further ado, Tom, it's all yours.
Well, thank you very much, Gay. Good evening, everybody, and thanks for joining us today, tonight. I want to talk a little bit about my book. I have a little bit of a presentation I want to go through with you, which kind of gives you a background about me, about why I thought it was important for me to write this story, and then we'll take some questions. So I'm going to go to, oh, I hear the fire trucks. I'm going to go to my trusty screen and start the show. Obviously, it's Yesterday's Soldier. The subtitle or the undertitle is A Passage from Prayer to the Vietnam War. And that's kind of what I'm going to explain about. But first, and I'm very proud of this, I got the announcement that my book, Yesterday's Soldier, is now part of the permanent collection of the Vietnam Center and Sam Johnson Vietnam Archive at Texas Tech University in Texas. This is the largest collection of Vietnam-related documents and media in the United States. And I was very proud when they asked me to contribute a couple of copies of my book. So I'm very proud of that. This is the building that will be completed at Texas Tech. I just want to give them a little plug. Hopefully I'm going to get there one of these days. All right, I'm set the years. This book takes place between 1968 and 1970. And in 1968, we had in the cultural world a couple of hits, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and Disney's Love Bug, big hit movies. President Nixon was elected. Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy were both assassinated. They had the violent Democratic Convention. And in the sports world, the Jets, the Mets, the Canadiens, the Celtics were all champions that year. And culturally, the Woodstock Rock Festival. So it's kind of a background of what was going on in the country. It's pretty much schizophrenic. And the young people were really raising their voices. And I was one of them. Meanwhile, in 1969, we had the largest number of American troops in Vietnam. We also had the largest anti-war demonstration in the fall of 1969 called the Moratorium. Men landed on the moon. And in Kent State, the National Guard killed 5 students who were anti-war protesting. And Ho Chi Minh, the father of the North Vietnam, had died. And the Vietnamese launched their second of their Tet offensive against Allied forces. So 69 was an even more violent year than 68. My life during all this time, I grew up in Connecticut. I went to a Catholic high school, Notre Dame, and it was taught by priests. And I was so impressed by these men that I entered their seminary in Northeastern Mass after I graduated from high school. I led a semi-monastic life there in the seminary. And what I mean by that is we ate frugally. We worked very hard when we weren't studying. We kept the vow of silence at night. We also swore vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. And we wore black cassocks and Roman collars. And we attended the local college that was attached, that we were attached to, Stonehill College. And I graduated from Stonehill in 1968 with a bachelor's degree. Also, after graduation, I left the seminary and I was facing the draft call-up. Now, I read from my book just a quick excerpt about how that happened. It's right in the front page of the book. I was in the seminary for 5.5 years, and I had my ups and downs as a seminarian, but by my senior year, I was doing very well. Um, I had gained the dean's list. I was putting it all together, as they say. So as you're getting ready to graduate, you go in and see Father Superior for your next assignment. And this is what happened to me. I was looking forward to being sent on to Notre Dame University for theology and ordination. I had finally made the dean's list. My activities on campus with the college newspaper and yearbook were in line with the new attitude in the church, going where the people are and being a witness to the Lord among them. And near the end of my senior year, I was called in the Father Superior's office to receive my assignment to theology and ordination. It was a shock then when Father Superior said, "Tom, we don't think you have a true vocation, and we will not send you to theology nor ordination. You have what is known as a temporary vocation," which of course was news to me. He then read a list of reasons why they made the decision. My grades were not that big, even though I had done recently done the dean's list. I lacked focus on the spiritual aspects of religious life, distracted as I was by the activities I pursued at the college. My time spent on the campus was time not spent with the community. Of course, it was also not proper for me to be too friendly with the co-eds, people who I worked with on the newspaper and the yearbook. In fact, I had even co-signed a student loan application for one of those co-eds, even though I had no money as a seminarian. I was shaken and hurt and confused by the decision, but Father Superior had one more thing to say to me. He said, "Tom, we are required by law to notify your local draft board immediately of the change of status from studying for the ministry to 1A, available for military service. We have to send that letter before you leave here." Just like that, my life had changed. I was not going to be a priest. I could be sent to a country 10,000 miles away and could be carrying a rifle, walking in the rice paddies in the jungle. It was 1968, the bloodiest year of the Vietnam War. I had a bachelor's degree in philosophy and a 1A draft classification, and I was a prime target for the draft. Well, that's how that started. Something I totally did not plan on, of course. Back to the, so, if nobody's familiar with the selective service or the draft, you were required to register on your 18th birthday. 18-year-old males up to 26-year-old were considered available. You had a 2-year obligation to the military, and dodging the draft was considered a federal crime. And we had a very large draft pool then because of us baby boomers. So I had some choices to make, obviously. I was high on the list due to the previous deferments I had as a seminarian. And companies were not hiring draft eligible people. I had many interviews with people, including IBM and some of the other major high-tech companies at the time, and they all thought I was a good candidate for their companies, but they wouldn't want to wait till after I completed my military obligation. So there was no job offer. And the National Guard had been filled previous to me leaving seminary, had already been filled. There were no slots. Canada was not a choice for me. I did not want to go to Canada as a deserter. So after speaking with my parents and some friends, I enlisted in October 1968 in the US Army. The Army life in 1968 is not what it is today. In 1968, it was very much like the Full Metal Jacket movie. A lot of physical and mental abuse. Your drill instructor could actually assault you if you did something wrong. We learned how to fire the M14 rifle, use grenades, and the M60 machine gun. This was all at Fort Benning, at Fort Dix, New Jersey, where I contracted pneumonia while crawling in the snow during some activities. After my hospital release, I was sent to Fort Jackson for infantry school training in March of '69. Learned more of the military weapons of that day, including the new M16, rocket launchers, M72 grenade launchers, all the weapons that were used in the modern infantry. I excelled in all phases of training, becoming an expert rifleman and machine gunner, and agreed to attend officer candidate school at Fort Benning. At the time, it sounded like it would be something that I would want to do. While I was at infantry officer school at Fort Benning, Georgia, and one day I was on a detail watering the lawn or mowing the lawn, I can't remember which, I suddenly had an awareness that I could not kill somebody. My seminary life finally raised to my consciousness, and it was at odds with the Army. So I made a conscientious objective decision. I ran to the first sergeant of our company, who was a very fair man, and he said, "You probably won't get discharged because you've already qualified in all your weapons. And the Army doesn't like it when they train you to kill somebody and you don't want to do it. They could send you to Fort Leavenworth." He suggested that I offer to serve as a non-combatant, but continue to serve in the military. So I took his advice. Part of the process of doing appeal as a conscientious objector is you have to talk to all the chaplains on the base. And I had a talk with a Catholic chaplain who was not very happy with me. He thought that I should be fighting the communists because they were antichrist. And I also talked to the Baptist chaplain, who was very sympathetic and understanding about the fact that I had just spent 5.5 years in a monastery, and no wonder I was having trouble with the Army. So I completed after 4 months of treatment. Now, what is treatment? There was an unofficial manner in which the Army treated people who wanted to not be a part of the military. They pressured you to pull the appeal by, and I didn't know it at the time, they assigned me a criminal investigation officer, who I didn't know he was a criminal investigation officer, but he was there to monitor me as a companion. He posed as another soldier, and he just kept an eye on me to make sure I wasn't doing anything, trouble, creating more people to object to the war. I was on garbage detail every day, and grease pit cleaner. These were very labor intensive and stinky jobs. I was on construction sandbag details on the weekends instead of a pass, and of course KP, which is working in a kitchen on the post. But I kept my mouth shut and I held to my convictions. And 4 months after that, I was granted the status of a non-combatant. I volunteered to attend combat medic school at Fort Sam Houston during the rest of my term, so I could save lives, not take them. And the Army agreed to that, and I started packing up for Fort Sam Houston in Texas when they changed their mind and my orders and assigned me to Vietnam in July of 1969, giving me 20 days of home leave before I had to report to Vietnam. So I don't know why they changed their mind, but I kind of am glad they did. Before we get to Vietnam, I want to read another excerpt from my book. This was, I can find it. While I was at Fort Benning, I had to go to a psychiatrist every week to be examined by the psychiatrist to make sure I wasn't crazy. I mean, after all, I was an expert rifleman. Why wouldn't I want to shoot it at people? I must be crazy. Kind of like catch-22. But anyway, uh, let me read a little bit about one of my meetings. Another part of the process for applying for a conscientious objector was to visit the base psychiatrist to ensure that I wasn't crazy for not wanting to kill people. I was sent to the base offices located in a large red brick building where I took a series of tests to certify that I was not insane. Each time I visited the doctor, I was asked to state, do you know what day it is? Why are you here? Do I have a soft spot on my head? And other questions. This went on for several weeks, along with physical exams and blood tests. They were very thorough. Eventually, the appointments to the psychiatrist stopped, but his assistant examiner, a young enlisted soldier whose name was Stuckey, was assigned to my case. Specialist Stuckey was sympathetic to my appeal, him being a graduate of a Catholic school in Detroit. He had his own problems with the Army, the way they were treating soldiers who had problems mentally. But Stuckey arranged to meet me each week as part of the counseling. And this gave me a break from the details because I had to appear at the counseling session and clean fatigues. So on that Thursday, they couldn't put me on garbage detail. It was a pretty cool little trick he pulled. Stuckey and I would have discussions on the war and politics and movies. And once a week, it was like being a normal person again. When I got my orders for Vietnam, I had to leave the post almost immediately, and I didn't have a chance to say goodbye to Stuckey. But as I write in the book, 37 years later, I found Stuckey's name on the internet, and I sent him a very late thank you letter and provided my phone number and my address. He called me one day. We had a great chat. He was now a full-blown doctor of psychiatry, and he had a practice out in the suburbs of Detroit. He was pleased that I had sent the letter, but he was most pleased that I had survived the war. So that I thought that was a pretty cool thing. So let's get back to Vietnam. So the plane ride was 27 and a half hours from Fort Dix, New Jersey, McGuire Air Force Base, to California, to Hawaii, to Guam, and then finally to Vietnam. It was a 707 military flight. There were no drinks. We had sandwiches and water, and we had civilian crew. The flight attendants were women, and the pilots were civilians. We arrived at Benoit Air Base. The pilot said, hurry up, we're under fire, you have to get out of the plane. So we literally ran out of the plane and were hit by the heat and the smells of Vietnam. This is at about 2 o'clock in the morning. The heat was incredible. I mean, I was down in Fort Benning, Georgia, where it was hot, but this was hot, tropical hot and humid. And the smells were the smells of diesel fuel and water buffalo crap that the Vietnamese used for fertilizer. That was all the rice fields around the base. You could smell it every day. And of course, I was scared. We arrived at our secure area at the 90th replacement station. And there we go. And I got very lucky there. When we arrived at the base at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, they started processing us in. And one of the things we had to do was we had all carried our personnel records with us. That was the Army way then. There were no computers. And we had a big file with us, and we had to put them on a table, a long table. No chairs, just a long table. And then they took us in different sections to do certain things like brush our teeth, have a quick physical exam, make sure we weren't sick, but we had to leave our files on on that table. And one of the clerks, who was a sergeant or specialist, I can't remember which, they were going through it and he saw Stonehill in my records, and he was a Stonehill graduate. So he pulled my file jacket, and the next couple of days, as we were getting processed, I finally got called into the personnel hut, and he welcomed me and said, "Where do you want to go?" And I said, "What do you mean, where do I want to go?" And he said, "Well, I can assign you anywhere." He said, "How about you assign you to Long Bin here, right up the street, large supply base." It was safe in the sense that we weren't attacked every night, except by rockets and sapper assaults, and you could pretty much work at a headquarters building. And I thought, you can do that? You're only a sergeant, and a sergeant, buck sergeant at that. And he said, yes. So my luck really came in handy there. So I was assigned to the Long Bin Post headquarters, the large logistical base in Vietnam, 25 to 35,000 troops at a given time. It was the central supply system for all of Vietnam. It had all the fuel, the bombs, the bullets. It was full of trucks that were going out every day, helicopters flying every day, transport planes. It was a huge place. There was approximately 2,000 buildings on the post. The building you see here is the building I worked in. It was a prefabricated 2-story metal building, which was air conditioned because the paper, if you didn't have it air conditioned, all the paper, which is what the Army runs on, right, would have disintegrated in the heat and the moisture. So I would work in that cool building till about 7 o'clock at night, every day. And then I'd leave and go to the extreme heat of the jungle down the hill to my barracks, which had no air conditioning. And that's how I lived for a year. We worked a 12-hour day, half day off per week, pulling guard duty on the wire twice a month. Now, I couldn't pull guard duty in the regular way because I was a non-combatant. I was not allowed to carry a weapon. So they made me a driver, a duty driver. And I would drive along that road you see in the picture there, picking up and discharging guards and officers who were checking on them. I would do that for a 24-hour period. During one of those sessions, I was shot at by a sniper. He missed me by about 6 inches. And this was at night. And if there's nothing else, it's again, my luck had held. It rained for 6 months and it was tropical heat for 6 months. So we were always damp and wet. While I was there, 2 big things happened. Nixon started pulling troops out. And of course, we invaded Cambodia, which made my logistic company very, very busy for 6 or 7 weeks while that campaign was going on. It was right near the end of my time over there, and it was very busy and very kind of scary. My work was either as an admin typist on the general staff or typing contracts for the companies that were helping to build bases in the country. Sniper attack I mentioned. I left for home in September of 1970 on the Flying Tiger 707 once again. And I was discharged at Oakland Army Base 30 hours later after flying from Vietnam to Japan, across the Northern Pacific to Alaska, and then down to Travis Air Force Base in California. My life after Vietnam. I had a mild case, and still do, of post-traumatic stress disorder. Loud noises still bother me. And if people come up from behind me, I get very jumpy. But I don't have the severe cases, thank goodness. And part of that reason is because we would be sleeping at night and the rockets would come in, or we'd be just getting up in the morning and the rockets would come in from the enemy. So those loud noises and not knowing if it was going to hit you kind of gives you a continual post-traumatic distress or disorder symptom. But I still have flash anger. Luckily, I have not been under the control of alcohol, which a lot of Vietnam veterans are, or drugs. I do have Agent Orange damage because the base we were on was cleared by, it was jungle, so they cleared it by applications of Agent Orange and the other defoliants that they use. There were all kinds of colors. There was orange, there was green, there was blue, but the general name for it is Agent Orange. And I breathed that dust during the dry season, and our water supply was contaminated by it. I also had job discrimination when I came home. I had a college degree and I had a secondary degree in English and in government. I couldn't get a job anywhere. Most people would not want to interview me, or if they did, they asked me how many people did I kill. And after a while, I took my name off took my service off my resume because I was getting crazy. I did go to grad school on the advice of my girlfriend, then my wife, and that changed everything. I started a career in education and learning, and I never looked back after that. I'm proud to say I'm a Vietnam veteran. I wasn't always proud to say that, but when I went to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial dedication back in '82, that was a wonderful time for most veterans, and people accepted us. They understood that we were not treated well on our return. They blamed us for the war, not the politicians. So I do have pride of service. I joined the Needham VFW post. Terry McGuire was the man who recruited me. Terry's no longer with us, but he was a Marine veteran of Vietnam and Korea. And I work today with our veterans at the VFW as the chaplain of the post, and I find it very rewarding. And here's the plug for the book, Yesterday's Soldier. It's available on Amazon, also as a Kindle. My website is tomkeatingwriter.com. And I want to thank you for listening to me. And if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. You have to unmute yourself. Any questions?
Yeah, Tom, this is Ed Cosgrove.
Hi, Eddie.
Did you know Alan Peralt?
I only learned of Alan when I was here in Needham with the VFW. Alan won the Silver Star posthumously in Vietnam for his heroic actions. If you don't know the Silver Star, it's the second highest award you can get in combat. The Medal of Honor being number one. Alan grew up in Needham. He went to Norwich University. I met his mother on many occasions as a member of the VFW, and his sister Jean. She is a very much involved in our Memorial Day activities because we honor the Vietnam veterans as well as the Korean veterans and other veterans of Needham who passed away. But I never met the man. He seems like he would have been a great guy to know.
Yeah, he was actually he was a classmate of mine at Georgetown. We both graduated in 1965 together. And the interesting thing was, I came from New Jersey. I didn't know anything about Boston in those days, except that he had the funny accent. And then when I moved up here in 1971, we bought our house. The house was on Laurel Drive, and I got something from the Alumni Association that mentioned Alan. So I looked him up in my yearbook. and it said that that he gave his address as Laurel Drive. So I said, "Oh my God, I just moved onto the same street
Oh, that's
that he had
wild,
lived
yeah.
on." Yeah.
You know, it's funny about the Boston accent. One of the things you learn in training is how to call for helicopter support in advanced training. And one day the training officer handed me the handset of the radio and said, "Call in the chopper." So I started doing it very much like the way they told me. And the pilot came over and said, "What the hell is that guy talking? Put on somebody I can understand." So they took it away from me and gave it to some Southern kid. And he had the drawl and he knew how to talk like that. And the pilot knew him immediately. I'm talking like this as a Bostonian. He didn't understand.
Yeah, right.
That was pretty funny.
I grew up on Laurel Drive.
Another Laurel Drive person. All right.
Yeah.
I did too.
So did he.
41 Laurel Drive. The house with the bumps.
The chicken pox house.
Oh, I remember that. I was at 69, just up a ways from the house with the bumps.
That's funny.
Are you a nutter?
Nope, they were two doors away from us. I'm Scott Davis.
Davis, okay.
Older brother Tom, class of 75. No, I don't know.
I lived in Laurel Drive from 47 to 61, and then from 74 to 90.
Mhm.
And then a couple years later that, yeah. I was back and forth between Laurel Drive.
Yeah, we bought our house in 71 and we're still there.
My parents bought the house in 37 and I sold it in 2006. Yeah.
Mhm.
And Paul, it was all cluttered too. Is Paul there?
Anybody
Yeah, I'm
else have
here.
a question?
I'm here.
Oh, anybody else have a question about the book
Oh, Laurel Drive?
or Laurel Drive? I tell you, it was and Tom Harkins can talk about this too. I wanted to write this book for years, and I when I was in the service, I kept a journal, and my girlfriend saved all my letters that I wrote her from Vietnam, which was really helpful in writing the book, because it was 48 years ago when I started writing, and of course everything had changed. And in order to help myself, I took a couple of courses at Boston College. They had a program called Agape for Veterans. It was a writing program free to veterans. And I found it to be very helpful. The instructor coach of that was very good at helping us focus on our details, focus on how we should honor our memories and stuff. And that was very helpful to me to help form my book, which I wanted to get published in 2020 because it would have been the 50th year since I came home, 1970, 2020. And, you know, the Library of Congress approved the ISBN on the 29th of December, 2019. So we just made it. So people have been very receptive to the book. I have some great reviews on it from people on Amazon, and so it's been a real pleasure to write it. It took a lot of effort, a lot of time, and I am writing a second book, which is the 2 years of coming home. That was also pivotal in my life, leaving the military and dealing with the post-traumatic distress I had, going to college, getting married, going to grad school, getting married, and trying to get work. And so that's the next chapter of this guy's life. And I hope to have this done within the year or so. We'll see what happens. Mike.
Hi. Yeah, actually, by the way, I got it from Amazon.
Yeah, right.
So I was interested, are you involved in the Catholic Church at all? And how do you obviously must have been very difficult. It seemed, this is just my interpretation, you didn't write this, but it really did seem like the Father Superior, I don't know if say had it in for you, but the whole kind of, and I'm going to call your draft board. I mean, that's kind of out of a bad movie. And then also the way the Catholic chaplain was not as supportive as the Baptist one. And we hear in Catholicism a lot about culture of life, and I just wonder, how are you able to kind of resolve that afterwards and looking back on it?
Good question. Yes, I think Father Superior, let me set a little bit about, in 1960s was a period of upheaval in the Catholic Church. They had the Vatican II Council, which kind of changed a lot of things and the Mass became in English. We didn't have to eat fish on Friday anymore. All of that was happening outside. I was in a seminary where all of the administration and the people in charge were extremely conservative people. And me and a few other seminarians of my class adopted the reforms that were going on. And so we stopped wearing our cassocks with the collar when we went to class. We started talking to the students. Before, we were told we couldn't talk to the students. We had to sit in the back of the class and only talk to the teacher, the instructor, and then come right home. We had to walk back and forth for lunch. We couldn't eat with the students. So it was very structured. We started to kind of chip away at that. So we started wearing casual clothes. We started talking to the students, including, of course, the co-eds, because they were students too. Father Superior didn't like that. We were constantly brought up before what the heck was it called? The penitent board, and given penance for our misbehaving. And it also didn't help that I was working on the school newspaper and working on the school yearbook, and I'd be there at night working on copy and stuff like that. So I'm missing prayers and things. So as a result, when it came time to send us to ordination, theology and then ordination, he had a book on me and all these violations. And it wasn't just me. There was about 6 of us who were refused advancement. And they were all guys like me who had adopted the new reforms. So yes, that kind of pissed me off. He was absolutely obeying the law at the time, that there was a change in my status. But as I said at the time to one of the assistant priests on my way out, I said, you could have given me a week to get home and get settled. You didn't have to do it tomorrow, But they're very, very conservative. They're going to go by the letter of the law. As for my relationship with the church, I still consider myself a Catholic. I do or did attend until COVID, St. Bartholomew's in Needham. I'm on the parish finance council there. I enjoy that community of people. I certainly enjoy what we do down there. As far as the Vatican is concerned, I don't care what they do. My church is important to me, so it's a dichotomy there. The Catholic chaplain down at Fort Benning, he was, actually, I just wrote a play about that confrontation and I expanded on it. I hope I win something. But in the play, he talks about you're a Roman Catholic and you're supposed to fight against the Antichrist, which is in this case the Vietnamese, because they're all communists and they want to kill all the Catholics, and you can't not do that. You have to do that. And I said, well, the just war theory doesn't exist anymore, Father. Pope John the 23rd destroyed it in his encyclical, because I was a smart ass college kid, right? And he didn't like that. But he tried to convince me that I had to fight. The Baptist chaplain, that was the first Baptist I ever talked to in a religious situation, talked to me for over an hour in his office. And he asked me questions, and he was impressed that I could still talk a little Greek and a little Latin from my days in the seminary. And he really understood the change that had happened to me and why it was such a problem for me to all this, and why all of a sudden it happened. He had a psychology degree. He said, you know, you've been suppressing that for 6 months. You're trying to be the good soldier. And all of a sudden it sprang up because your soul knows, and this is a Baptist, that it's wrong and you can't do it. He was a wonderful guy. And he wrote a recommendation for them to give me the status. His commanding officer didn't. His commanding officer, chaplain, did not recommend, but the chaplain did, and he put his name on it, which I'll never, and I have a copy of that in my records. I'll never forget that. So yeah, the religion is still important to me. Organized church stuff, I'm not crazy about. So, side note, Michael. So 6 years later, it's all over, right? I'm working as a teacher, and we're invited to this affair at St. Patrick's in Watertown. I forget what the affair was, but there was an assembly outside. They were dedicating something there at the church. So my wife and I go there, and we're standing there listening to whoever the people were talking about stuff. And I get this big from behind, a big bear hug. Oh, I go, what the heck? What is this? And I turn around. It was Father Superior. He said, Tom, how are you? How's everything going? I looked at him, I said to myself, you son of a bitch. And all of a sudden I'm a nice guy, you know. But he was no longer Father Superior. He was working for some organization. I think it was Family Theater. But wasn't that funny? Like we were old friends, and then
Yeah.
but yeah, it was quite, that's why I wrote this. I thought there was a lot of interesting things that happened in that period of time, and I was kind of like the little kid walking through all that, and all those things were happening, and I kind of wanted to reflect on that. So yeah, it was good. What did you think of the book overall, Mike?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting story. About going through that. Nice, very plain writing style, so very easy to follow.
Good.
So I enjoyed it. I read it over the last 3 or 4 days.
Good.
I wanted to finish before this evening.
I have to say, thank you. The book original length was 250 pages. And a Needham resident who was a world-renowned book editor edited my book. And how that happened, which is weird because I couldn't afford that. I was doing a poppy drive while I was writing the book in like 2018. I was up at Roach Brothers, and this woman comes up to our table, puts in $1 or whatever it is, and we hand her a poppy. She says, any of you guys know Tom Keating? I think he's in the VFW. And I said, yeah, I'm Tom Keating. She said, well, I'm so-and-so. And I like the way you wrote that article about the poppies in the Needham Times. And she gave me her card. And I see, holy mackerel. So I said, well, thank you anyway. So I've got this 250 pages. I polished it as hard as I could, I thought. And so I said, I need a book editor. I said, I wonder if so-and-so knows anybody I could afford. So I called her up, and we had coffee up at Bagel's Best. And she said, so why don't you let me do it? And I said, I can't afford you. She said, we'll work a deal. I want to work on this book. Unbelievable. And she got me to get it go from 250 pages to the 147 we have now. She was very good. She was a taskmaster, but she was really good, and she would write. And I'm having coffee with her this week. So that was another lucky thing that happened to me. Otherwise, there's a lot of Vietnam veterans that publish quote, publish their books, and they Xerox it. And it's got all sorts of stuff in it. This is a book. It's got the Library of Congress approval on it, and it's a book, and it's got stuff. Was there any story besides the priest thing that you liked, Michael?
That was the part that I just found, just the most interesting part, and also the interesting with the ending, where you talk about going back and just how much had changed. And it was kind of interesting because I think the world had changed so much in its view of the war, but also, as you point out, I wasn't raised I was actually raised Lutheran. And, in the 70s, this was kind of the end of the era of when Lutheranism was, just kind of reflexively anti-Catholic.
Yeah.
Although, as I used to tell I have a close friend who's very involved in Catholic Church about how Vatican II is when the Catholics became more Lutheran.
Exactly.
But I found that transition interesting. I also just like a lot of the little things about military life. Some of that is just interesting to read. Things you just don't appreciate at the time.
How about the airport scene? When I got out of when I was at the
On the
airport,
way back with meeting with the
guys in the diner. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was a nice story too. Yeah,
Yeah.
it looked like there was a lot of, you did encounter some hostility, but you encountered a lot of very supportive people along the way as well.
That's exactly right. Especially when I got to the airport, and it was like 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was starving, and the red cap got me down to the diner, and then
Right.
didn't have to pay. And then the woman, the telephone
Operator, yeah.
gave me all that change, which was cool. And then getting on the plane and that flight attendant.
Mhm.
So, yeah, and that kind of countered what happened at Logan Airport and at what happened at San Francisco Airport.
Yeah.
Nothing serious, but just annoyance stuff. And I had to make it. I wanted to make sure people understood that I did have a positive return that day.
Mhm.
It was later on that things got a little hairy, but that's in another book. Yeah.
Right.
Any Tom?
Tom, yeah, when the Father Superior snuck up behind you and grabbed you from at St. Patrick's, your PTSD didn't kick in?
Well, I was shocked. It was he was a big guy. He was 6'6", which was probably why he was Father Superior. And so it wasn't like a lock. I couldn't do anything.
There was a wrestling component to becoming
Yeah.
Father Superior.
Yeah, it was very scary. It was, but as soon as he came around, oh geez, it's you. One of those. That's, yeah, that's funny. Yeah, I stopped going to the fireworks up here on the 4th of July because of the smell of the gunpowder.
Oh,
Just sent me back, so I stopped going. We used to go every year.
No fireworks this year.
We're parade though, right?
The parade, yes. And they'll be firing off the guns. But this year, the parade is having a quiet zone where there'll be no sirens and no guns being shot off.
Oh,
And
that's
no
good.
loud music. Because some kids were significantly disturbed by all the noise.
Yeah, but remember you used to see the little kids with the ear muffs on, with the ear covers, which I thought was a great idea, because the little ones shouldn't have to hear those loud noises. So I guess I don't have to worry about not going up to the library steps to see a fireworks. Anybody else? Oh, and thanks, Mike, for the question. Scott? No, I thought you had your hand up. Well, if nobody else has anything else to say, I guess, Gay, we can wrap it up.
Oh, put the book, the announcement on for the book.
All right.
One as a passing thing. What do you got events to come? Gay Ellen?
I have one more event to come, and we are going to be doing a book launch for one of our favorite people here. We've done all of the other book launches for him, and that is for Peter Zutlin. He has written a fictional version of his first book, all about his ancestor, Annie
Hold it
Cohen
up, Tom.
Kopchowski, AKA Annie Londonderry, who back in the 1894 rode a bicycle the entire length of the world. So,
Wow.
so the book is called Spin. It's coming out on June 2nd, and we will be doing a book launch.
Oh,
So
cool.
go and
Wow.
sign up from the event calendar on the library webpage, and I will announce that we have a new webpage that will be premiering sometime mid-June, which will make it much easier to find out
Oh.
what's happening at the library. So look
Great.
forward to that. And all kinds of other good things. And that pretty much finishes up my programs for at least for the school year, and we'll be back in September.
Thank you.
This is Zoodlin's last book that I'm just finishing now.
Yeah. We've had the privilege of being able to launch all of his stuff, so we're looking forward to
Cool.
doing this one.
Well, thanks to the Needham Library for letting me talk tonight. And thank you folks for attending, and have a good night. And I'm going to say goodbye.
Thank
Say
you all.
goodbye.
Thank you.